All right. We got 5 minutes till we're starting. I'm just looking for something real quick. All right. Hey, VJ.
Hey Don, how's it going?
Good. Wait 1 sec. I'm still learning the software. Let me.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm glad it's not just I'm not the only noob.
All right. That's cool. Hey, how's your day?
It's going pretty well so far. How about you?
You had a pretty good week in crypto, I'd say.
Yeah, although I mean, never count your chickens before they hatch. It's always a volatile, crazy world. Um,
Example A of that is today.
yeah, exactly.
But
Where
my
do you,
friend texted me and he was like, what do you say? Is like crypto down second day in a row. Okay. And then
Mhm.
I said, what's BTC and ETH at right now? Obviously, I could just look that up. So
Right, right.
I asked that for a provocative reason. You said ETH is just under 3,600. BTC is just under 118,000. I said exactly. Those are
Right,
great
yeah.
numbers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's wild how quickly your expectations adjust. But I mean, I have to check myself all the time, having been, I went down the rabbit hole pretty early, and like, it's just wild to me how far it's come from the early days.
Yeah. All right.
Like,
Let's save all that because I got a
yeah, yeah,
presentation.
sure.
I did some research on you. You got a cool background, Coinbase and Harvard. All right. So we're live right now.
Oh, cool.
Really, I'm just curious to get to know you, and I think this is like one of the most important topics for startups. Um, so I was hoping we could go through your vision for the future, and then at the end share about what you're doing and what startups can do if they want to potentially work with you.
Okay. My vision for the future in the context of Bitcoin.
Yes.
How long? How long do we have?
Yeah,
That,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, that's that. We're gonna get to it quickly. I'll put
Okay.
this on 1.5 speed. I always do this intro,
Yeah,
just for
yeah.
anyone that's watching. Okay, so for those of you watching, my name's Don. I started off by sleeping in these closets. That was my pre-renovation on the left, post-renovation on the right. I effing love startups. They're just fun. They're cool. They're a way to live your life in a unique way. And I have a little bit of experience in venture. I was a scout for General Catalyst, which is a big venture fund, and I think probably closer to 20 billion now. But I invested from their fund. I raised 5 million for my own fund, and then I raised another 5 million for a startup that I ran. I worked at Meta after all that, and then more recently, I've been doing this Money Cage event. And so Money Cage is basically a live show on X. And today we're visited by VJ from Epoch VC. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you're our third guest. We had Mercedes Bent, who's a partner at Lightspeed Ventures, as our fourth guest slot or our third guest slotted in. But you sent me a cold message 2 days ago, and it just really sparked my interest. And I felt like, okay, let's do a pop up one tomorrow. And so I appreciate you hopping in here.
Yeah.
Um, can you give maybe the little bit of story or a little bit of your background, starting from? Let's start with Coinbase. Like I think that was 2021. You were there. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what is that like being a part of Coinbase during that wild time, 2021?
Yeah, it was totally wild, and I had wanted to work there for a long time. Kind of went down the crypto rabbit hole, like I guess 7 or 8 years before that, and was kind of building a career up to go work at Coinbase. And when they went remote during COVID, since my wife didn't want to move to San Francisco, decided it was time to make the leap. And I mean, so when I joined Coinbase, it was just around the time they did the direct listing. There were like 1,200 people on the day that I got there, and by the time I left, like a year and a half later, there were 6,000 people in the
Wait,
organization.
you joined the day they did the direct listing
Not the
on the
day of,
NASDAQ?
but it was either right before or right after. So it was
Wow.
right around that time. Big time of change for Coinbase.
I was
Obviously
just
huge.
looking at the stock. I think the stock just got back up to the price of where it was
Yeah,
back then. Yeah, it's taken a few years.
yeah. And I mean, I've always been a fan of what they do. They're super, like, some of the smartest people I've ever worked with in my career.
Oh, I'm sure.
Um, and I've also always sort of had the thesis that, like, they're going to be an insanely valuable company just on the basis of their venture portfolio
Yeah.
alone.
They were
uh,
early seed investors in Circle, right? Something
yeah, I mean,
insane.
they invest in all the good deals. They have really great people on their ventures team and the corp dev team more broadly.
Yeah.
And they're
Because
just super thoughtful about executing and building great and shipping great stuff.
and Brian Armstrong, their CEO, he has a I think doesn't he have that 10% rule where it's like 10% of profit each year gets spent on innovation or experiments internally.
Yeah, I think that was actually kind of a new thing that he formalized,
Mm-hmm.
that they formalized while I was there. I mean, they've always been trying to strike this balance between, you know, perfecting the great products they have and doing things super efficiently and in a kind of
Mm-hmm.
top of class way, and moving fast and breaking things and building new stuff. And so they've gone through a few different iterations of, like, organizing the company around that. And it's a really big challenge because they very much want to be a tech company pushing the envelope on kind of like on-chain decentralized technology, but also have like a financial services business at their core.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they've done a great job of trying things quickly and pivoting if the structure or the approach isn't working, and building new things as quickly as they can. Um, yeah, but I was there on the biz ops team, which is kind of like the internal consulting team that they have,
Mm-hmm.
um, and supported a lot of their product, but also like legal and compliance. Given I went to law school, I'm not a lawyer, but I spent my whole time in law school trying to understand legal and regulatory stuff. So I helped them launch their policy team at the time, helped
How
them
big was
reorg
the
some of their
team when you
compliance
were?
stuff.
I know it was
Well,
1,200 in total, but how big was the policy team?
I mean, when I joined, it was really just one person that was advocating to build it and get it launched. And then pretty quickly, I think by the time I left, it was a team of like 16 people. I don't know how big they are now, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, compare over just a few short years to see the impact they have had has been pretty incredible.
And is the
Yeah, they're just
policy
really.
team the team that's going to Washington?
Yes, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Like when I was there, but before I had joined, they had never had a policy team. They had been engaged. I think they had people, involved in like the bit license process back in the day in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and they had been involved a little bit, but there wasn't, I don't think, sort of a lot of mind share allocated in Washington. And I think Coinbase also just sort of wanted to stay out of that game
Mm-hmm.
for a long time. But the industry had gotten to a point where they realized they needed to get involved, and kind of step up that effort. And they've really, they brought in Faryar, who's has an incredible career in policy at Goldman and other kind of TradFi institutions, and he built a really great team that has, I think, really pushed the envelope on the policy front in an important way for the industry. And I think in ways that are maybe not always, like, there's the kind of like dog and pony show of the lobbying and trying to influence Congress people and their staff and help
Mm-hmm.
craft legislation. But they also do a lot of great, like, sort of what I would call activist litigation, like getting involved in the important, nitty gritty, kind of boring stuff to non-lawyers that's happening in the courts. That is, I think, almost the more important stuff for our industry. So they're really,
Mm-hmm.
I know, a big kind of service to the whole space.
Wasn't there like a not open source is the wrong word, but it was like a consortium of I think there's a bunch of crypto companies that were lobbying in 2021, 2022. Do you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about? Was this? I know Coinbase was one of the key things. Like when I was watching the CNET, C-SPAN, whatever it was like this group of crypto influencers that were up there talking.
yeah. There's a few different sort of organizations. Like there was the Blockchain Association, which they were kind of partnered. I mean, it's a small world. We all work. We all work
Were
together.
you a part of that? I remember seeing on your LinkedIn the
The
Blockchain
the
Association.
in the early days, I did some like consulting work for them when they were getting started. And they also have like grown, incredibly since then. Back then, it
Mm-hmm.
was just really Kristen Smith and um, starting to get a foothold in DC. But Coinbase was, one of the there's a handful like Coin Center in DC has been. I mean, they're the OGs pushing on the policy front. And then there's the Digital Chamber of Commerce is another big one. Coinbase, I think, kind of led the effort on this Stand with Crypto, which was more like a political action committee that did more
Mm-hmm.
of the fundraising stuff during the election. Um,
What a
and
huge, huge, huge mistake that was, letting the crypto people go.
I really don't. Yeah, I mean, there's a long list of mistakes I feel like the Democrats made, and from my perspective, I it feels sort of scary as somebody who wants to be a steward of the space, and I believe like really strongly in the long term value of what we're trying to
Yeah,
build.
sure.
I get worried that when it becomes kind of like a partisan issue, because there's so much about Bitcoin and crypto that should appeal to both sides of the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well,
Particularly from like an inclusion and
it did in some ways, right? Like this was fairly bipartisan. We'll see what happens in the Senate with these next
Mhm.
two acts. Um, but
Yeah.
I guess I don't know if it was bipartisan, but I guess relatively it was fairly bipartisan.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think they've done and Coinbase has been like a leader at trying to hold the line on this. Like they have
Mm-hmm.
done a good job of trying to continue to communicate and partner with both parties as much as possible. There's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of the sort of anti-crypto army on the in the Democratic Party. Uh, I think made it hard, like gave up the ground, I think, to the Republicans in the election in a way that was bad for the Democrats. And I worry sometimes that it could be bad for crypto because if that narrative sticks in people's heads, like I live in Seattle. So when I talk about, oh, I work on Bitcoin stuff, people are kind of like, oh, like, so you're like a MAGA dude, like, which is not
No way. Has
like,
Bitcoin become MAGA now? No
I mean,
way.
to some people, like I don't know how
Jeez.
much in the zeitgeist that is, but
Yeah.
that's concerning to me in the long term because I think it's like for the people, it's for everybody. It'll fix a lot of problems in the world, and
My
uh,
my bigger concern, maybe it's unfounded, is like Satoshi wakes up one day and he's like, "Wait, Wall Street, fuck these guys," and he just like sells all his tokens for pennies on the dollar.
yeah,
He's like,
yeah,
"Wait, what happened?" So
yeah,
but
yeah.
I did the calculation. He's got 5% of the total supply, so like it would be more of a shock than an ending. But yeah.
Yeah, it would be more of a, I don't know, like almost like a religious crisis at this point,
Exactly, which
than
I
a
think is
pure
what you're
price
saying.
level.
Like in some ways, I think we're kind of too big to fail as
Yeah,
a.
I mean, well, we were saying this before. Like, it's hard for me not to take that for granted at this point because, like, when I started learning about Bitcoin in like 2011 when I was graduating college, and
Mhm.
I was broke, so I didn't buy any. But I got really captured by the idea because I was an economics and finance nerd, and so
Someone told you about it.
I think I saw somebody like I think I saw like a thing in the Wall Street Journal or CNBC. They were just trashing it, and I was like,
Mhm.
well, this sounds kind of interesting. Like money that is sort of decentralized and not controlled by the state is an interesting concept to a economist or a finance nerd. And then
Mhm.
I kind of it took me down all these Austrian economics and all these different rabbit holes that people go down. And I was totally convinced that this is like one of the most important things to happen in definitely in my lifetime. So that pulled me into wanting to work in
And
this
so
space.
were you technical at all, or you were just into econ?
I was just in the econ. I mean, my first job out of college, I was doing sort of like proto data science. I was doing economic consulting, like applied microeconomics and econometrics. So I was
Mhm.
doing some big data stuff, but not an engineer by any means. And um, but that's one of the many cool things about Bitcoin is like if you're a curious person, there's just like it's like a playground of things to learn about. So became a little bit more knowledgeable about cryptography and technology more generally, and hung out in a lot of the meetup groups, and the community of Bitcoiners is just so awesome in my opinion. It's just like a very inclusive group of people that really care about changing the world with this thing. And so yeah,
It's the
but
most it's the most insane representation of how powerful an idea is.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
crazy the legs that this one concept has. And the
hmm,
amount it's really no different than religion, you know. It's the same kind of concept where they've all basically rallied around this central idea, and it's
yeah,
just so powerful. It's been going. I mean, I first started learning about it and hearing about it because I had roommates when I lived in San Francisco that had a crypto fund. It was
hmm,
2017, maybe 16.
hmm.
So I was relatively late to the game. Um,
That's still pretty early.
sure. Well, I didn't go as balls deep as you did at that point, but it was but it's just crazy. Like people like you. I mean, was it one of the happiest moments on Friday? Like I was ecstatic seeing like
Oh, you mean like,
you guys kept us alive. Yeah, like all you crazy
yeah,
mother effers that like did this. It's insane. Honestly, it's
yeah,
insane that you just kept believing in this the whole time.
right, just like memed it into
Yeah.
into reality. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it
It
is
was a
absolutely
joke.
crazy.
It
Yeah,
was amazing. Like,
yeah,
do you think about that? How ridiculous? What?
every day, like every day.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. Is compared to those early days, like the fact that the president of the United States and presidential candidates are talking about this, and legislation is getting passed, and you know even back in 2021 when like El Salvador made it legal tender, there's just
Right.
like it like you have the biggest financial institutions in the world talking about Bitcoin strategies and using Bitcoin as collateral. I mean, these are all things that I believed should happen based on just the incentives of the financial system and how Bitcoin works.
Right.
And but to see it happen, I never had a strong perspective of what the timeline would be. Like when I first started buying some Bitcoin, I thought, okay, this is just something I'm going to buy because I believe in it. I want it to work, and I'm never going to touch it. And maybe 20 years from now, it'll be a real thing. And I guess 10 years later, it is here to stay, kind of unavoidable. It is surprising to me though how many people still, like my uncle. There's people in my community in my life that like are still like, oh, you're still doing that stupid scammy Bitcoin thing. It I don't know what it will take to kind of just kick that negative association. But people, I don't know, are so attached to the way things are in so many ways that change or new things are fearful. And some of the negative, like I don't know, propaganda, for lack of a better word, from the people that don't want this to exist is very effective at I don't know, giving those people an out to avoid having to think about it in a real fundamental way.
Yeah. 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 But also, once this, I mean, there's two more acts that need to get signed into law, and then I think mostly at 90% of the woods. And then it's like, well,
Yeah,
their opinion by default will have to change over time. I think most people like, what was Michael Saylor's quote this last week? He's never met a Bitcoin critic who spent more than 100 hours learning
yeah,
about it. Like,
yeah,
I think that it just takes so much time to really figure out what's going
for
on,
sure. Well, it takes a long time to understand Bitcoin, and it also, I think that the thing that it's revealed the
and
most to me is
money.
how little people understand about money. Yeah, and
Yeah.
even me, I'm a nerd. I've spent so much time trying to understand it, and there's still things where I just don't, I get confused, or and I don't, and it's I don't think it's like intentionally complex. There are people who are more cynical than me that think they sort of make it intentionally complex so people don't understand it. But it is just sort of the, like, money is such a fundamental aspect of human interaction in society that once you kind of grok that and understand how it works, it's hard to ignore the impact that it has on society and the potential benefits that Bitcoin or just having a global neutral monetary standard could have in terms of improving the world. So um, if you're someone who likes big ideas and like making things better, I think it has a real attraction. If you're willing to get over the hurdle of spending maybe maybe hundreds of hours to get smart enough to understand that. But yeah, I mean, I hope more and more people will, be willing to kind of forego all the work. There's people in the Bitcoin community who say like nobody really understands Bitcoin. There's just so much of it.
Sure.
And if you
Yeah.
can accept that and realize like, okay, well, now I have enough sort of, credibility or vicarious credibility through these other institutions acknowledging its value, I can stop worrying about it and just kind of, maybe get some exposure or get involved and open myself up to it a little bit, because I think it will be beneficial to, humanity if people do that.
Are the early Bitcoiners pissed about what's happening right now? Some subset of them?
I think, yeah. I mean, I think there are definitely some who are, and I wouldn't put myself in that category. I'm not pissed, but I'm worried. Like, I
Mhm.
think, the progress is good, but it does feel like a sort of dangerous inflection point, where there are, possible universes in the future where this is the beginning of a great, sort of renaissance and era of progress for Bitcoin and money. And there's also a scenario where this is the first step in kind of like regulatory capture and centralization of this thing that started off as a very kind of like, rock and roll money for the people kind of movement that could get captured by states and institutions in a way, and kind of distorted in a way that could limit the impact that it has.
How
And
does
I think,
that tangibly or technically happen? Is that just because of certain laws? It's not like they can go buy all the Bitcoin or whatever. Like, how would they actually impact it?
yeah. So I mean, the most tangible example of this would be, so you could make an argument that like the reason governments went off the gold standard originally was because gold is susceptible to centralization. It's hard to move around. You can't really like hold gold, a bunch of gold in your
Hmm.
garage.
Makes sense.
So people want to deposit them in banks, and then the banks become these kind of honeypots for governments and entities that want to control the financial system. Right now, Bitcoin is very easy to hold yourself on some level, but it's kind of hard. Also, it's technically hard, and there's a scenario where governments try to crack down, make it harder for people to hold it, which will force kind of a reliving of that history where maybe people hold Bitcoin, but it all flows into banks because they don't want to go through the effort of self-custodying their Bitcoin. It becomes this kind of centralized hub and spoke model where financial institutions hold most of it and governments can sort of create like a fiat monetary system on top of Bitcoin. That's a possible future that would, I think be better than what we have now if it's at least somewhat backed by a hard asset like Bitcoin, but not like the full beautiful utopian future that I think a lot of Bitcoiners yearn for, where the state doesn't control the money. We have a sort of neutral, independent monetary
And
asset.
does the anti CBDC act fix that, or is just a
That
little bit?
it's certainly helpful. I think the big thing is in the Clarity Act. I think there's some language floating around that will um, sort of limit the government's ability to regulate or prevent self custody.
Hmm.
Um, so, like some Bitcoiners talk a lot about the 6201 attack, which is a reference to when FDR was president. He put out an executive order, I think 6201, that basically said it was illegal for American citizens to own gold, and they would like come confiscate your gold. So
Mm.
that that's kind of a big fear in the back of the
Would
mind
they
of
confiscate it
Bitcoiners.
and give you cash in exchange, or they would
I
just
actually don't
confiscate
know. I assume they would have had to. Um,
at
but maybe not,
least?
because if it was like a criminal act, they might have been able to just kind of take it.
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I don't know how much it was enforced, but it was, it was illegal for Americans to hold monetary gold for a long time.
I,
Um,
I I get your concern, and I mean, yes, it's like, of course there's that risk. Well, let me, I guess, before I give my, what percentage of like fear versus optimism do you assign to that risk versus everything else that's good right now?
um, I'm always an optimist,
Uh
and
huh.
I think the beautiful thing about Bitcoin and kind of the internet and technology more broadly is that it is very anti-fragile and sort of censorship resistant.
Uh huh.
Even in a world where they tried to crack down on it, or decide that it's bad for the world to have people being their own banks and custodying their own money, there will always be a community of people who resist that, and it's a lot easier to resist it with Bitcoin than it is with gold, because you can just, Bitcoin can live in your brain. You don't even really need anything technically. You can have a seed phrase where you can control your money,
Hmm.
and nobody can stop you from doing it. So it is very, liberating in that sense, and I think resistant to that kind of overreach.
Hmm.
So I think it has much those elements make it much more likely that anyone trying to move it in that direction will quickly run into the reality that it's just much harder to do. It's sort of like the war on drugs or any of these big government efforts that try to control human behavior in the face of the fact that humans are just do things. You can pass all the laws you want, but people are going to do what's best for them or what they decide they want to do. I think this would be another scenario like that where they could try. It might slow it down. It might extend the timeline between where we are now and when we live in a world where people just kind of use Bitcoin as money. But I think in some ways it's pretty unavoidable.
I mean, two ways to go with this. Let me think. Okay, so you talked initially in your message about your backing what's coming next, like custody,
Yeah.
credit, compliance, infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
So is that your investment thesis, or is that your world thesis, or both? Or I mean, I guess they're both. But what
Yeah.
exactly, when you say we're backing what comes next, can you explain what already happened and then how you think about it?
Yeah. So like the world as it exists today, I would say, and maybe this is changing real time and is definitely much better now than a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But there was sort of these two worlds of people building on top of Bitcoin and crypto more broadly. But like there were technologists and people who saw the problems building technological solutions with sort of an engineering mindset, like if you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
Then there were
Yeah.
people in the financial world who just thought those people were stupid.
Yeah.
And so you have a lot of innovation and stuff being built for Bitcoin to let people who are kind of curious and somewhat techie get involved and use it. And then the traditional financial system hasn't really integrated with Bitcoin all that much. That's not they're not, the Venn diagrams overlap increasingly every day, but that's sort of the historical problem. And with Bitcoin specifically, I think a big part of our thesis is that like if you look at Bitcoin as an ecosystem, it's the biggest ecosystem. It has the most users, the highest market cap. It's a huge global community. But from a venture perspective, it's very underinvested in. You have a lot of huge, multi-billion-dollar crypto funds that are buying tokens and looking for the next Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
but not always investing in founders that are building in a way that focuses on Bitcoin. So our thesis is Bitcoin has the most likely claim to be sort of a global monetary asset in the medium to long term.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to require a lot of infrastructure to be built to bridge those two worlds so that the financial system can plug into Bitcoin. People building interesting, like more self-sovereign Bitcoin technologies can thrive and build those things in a way that maybe competes with the existing infrastructure or slowly merges and creates some kind of new hybrid system between the two. So those are the kinds of projects we're investing in, and that's like kind of the core of our thesis.
And do you rely on the founders to be able to go get those customers from traditional worlds, or is that something you do or help with?
We try to be super involved with the founders, and we're kind of a startup ourselves. We're just working on our fund one, still fundraising, but we have started deploying. We have 10 portfolio companies at this point. But mostly pre-seed, seed stage companies, and try to help connect founders to our networks that are more either traditional finance or more established companies in the crypto ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, founders who are building companies know who their customers are and go out and get them. But we're happy to be partners in that process, whether it's like thinking through the go-to-market strategy or what the product looks like to attract those customers, or connecting them with people that might help them grow the business.
And so these are 8 of the first 10, I'm assuming.
Yeah. But we have
Uh,
two new ones that are just in the last week or so.
which was your first one from the fund?
I think the first one was Crobo.
Okay. And have you been making angel investments personally throughout this
So
time period?
Eric, my partner, started working on this about a year and a half ago and was doing some angel investments that we warehoused into the fund. So Crobo was one of those.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So they're doing well, presumably, if you warehouse it.
Yeah. They're using Bitcoin on the back end to facilitate remittance payments between the U.S. and India, and have been doing quite well.
So is it a platform, and do they launch their own stable coin, or how does this work?
So the way that it works is you can, like, if you're sending money from the US back to India,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a way where you can do it Bitcoin natively, or a way where the Bitcoin is sort of, the Bitcoin layer of it is kind of abstracted away from the user, but it converts it into Bitcoin and uses a Lightning payment to send it to an exchange in India that the founders have a relationship with. They also own this exchange in India to convert back to, Indian liquidity, and get it into people's bank accounts on the India side. So it results in much cheaper and much faster remittance payments, which has kind of been like a white whale of the Bitcoin crypto industry. Remittance has been a use case that has always been sort of talked about as a great use case for Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
and hasn't quite. I mean, people have done it in multiple different iterations, but I don't think it's fully reached its saturation in the market as a use case. So there's another company that we've been working with doing something similar in the Caribbean. That we're excited about that use case because it
these.
is. They're not on there yet, but Guap is the name of the company.
Guap. 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 And so when you fund, maybe Crobo is not the best example because it was warehouse, but let's use, why not? So Crobo, is that a good example of how you like to enter into these companies? Like, are you trying to buy a certain percentage, certain stage, or are you agnostic to as long as you have a good founder?
I would say we focus more on the founder and the product. We're A lot of VCs focus on like hitting a specific ownership target. I think our background is more TradFi, so we probably do more like modeling than your standard early stage VCs. So we build like financial models, and as long as we think we can hit kind of our targets for returns, given our size, that ends up being correlating to an ownership percentage, usually very early stage, pre-seed or seed. And we're writing check sizes, low to mid six-figure check sizes at this point. So like we don't come at it with that framework necessarily. Like we're not writing things off if we can't get a certain ownership percentage, but we are based on what we think the size of the market and the company could be, and how that relates to our targets for returns.
You're getting into these companies are top quality blockchain, crypto, Bitcoin companies. These are some really good co-investors, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty excited about the portfolio and the founders we get to work with. Yeah.
Is this the right Guap right here?
You can't. I think it should be guap.money.
Oh, that's a cool URL.
That might not be right.
What's the one that you sourced first? I'll click on that one as well.
I don't know that I've like individually sourced any of them. I mean, we're drawing on our networks for the most part. So we have founders that reach out to us, and we work pretty closely with the other Bitcoin venture funds in the space.
This one looks cool. Whoa, what's this? Castle.
Yeah, so Castle, I mean, I'm really excited about this one as well. They're building sort of like a software for businesses that want to do a Bitcoin treasury strategy, but not in the like Michael Saylor go public way, just in the way that they believe in Bitcoin and they want to allocate a certain portion of their assets to the asset. So it's software that kind of enables automation of, we're going to allocate 10% of our revenue into Bitcoin, and they help them manage all of that on the back end.
Wow. So this integrates with an API of Stripe or something. It pulls out data, pulls out certain amounts of money and then buys Bitcoin and then custodies it all automatically. That is
Right.
insanely
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I think that like sort of allows for real time, adjustment in an easy way of your strategy.
Uh-huh.
Lemon Drop is cool. Lemon Drop is for all the degens who maybe want to get back into Bitcoin.
Uh-huh.
They're I think like many of us who've been around for a long time, sort of started off in Bitcoin, went off and explored the rest of the crypto world, and are coming back in some important ways to Bitcoin. So this product is it operates like an app or a web extension where if you're trading, meme coins or other tokens on Solana, you can set it up so that when your trade executes, it carves off. It's kind of like Acorns for degens. You can carve off a portion of your transaction to stack some sats as a savings vehicle. So while you're trading, you're still saving in Bitcoin.
Man, that's above my pay grade. All right.
not a big trader.
I do three things. I buy Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum, and I hold it.
Yeah, I mean that is the I don't know, that you'll sleep better at night if you do that. I'll put it
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
way.
No, I got a few. I got some optimism and stuff, but for the most part, I don't know enough. I
Hmm.
actually just bought my first meme coin. It was quite the experience.
Hmm.
I felt
Hmm.
I felt like they were mocking me the entire time.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
I've never wanted to give someone money who is so just rude to me in their marketing copy, but I did it.
That's interesting. I didn't know they were abusive.
It was a T69000 or something. Anyways,
Got it.
whatever. All right.
Yeah. I've
Uh,
I've avoided the meme coins at this point.
yeah, I'm
But
not. I do too.
I guess, in the earlier cycles, I was not as immune to them. I definitely, had my fair share of YOLOing into things I shouldn't have YOLOed into.
And so, do you even touch Ethereum or like your full maxi Bitcoin,
So
100%?
I wouldn't describe myself, at least, as like as much of a. I mean, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist in the sense that I think it's the best asset out there. It will
Sure.
be global money. We're not like, if people are building, we're pragmatic in the sense that like if people are building products and their customers want access to other things and it's
Hmm.
important for their business, that's, makes sense to us. Like some of uh, the remittance companies will have stable coins integrated into what they're doing, or like Lemon Drop is explicitly interacting with the Solana meme coin ecosystem. I think there are
Hmm.
some Bitcoin maxis that just wouldn't even want to touch it. Another part of our thesis and what we're kind of working through right now is
Hmm.
we're investing in equity in businesses, which is kind of atypical in the crypto VC world. They all do it, but a lot of the crypto VCs are just trying to get tokens.
Right.
Um,
So the equity's just there as a distraction.
it's
Yeah.
often, yeah, sort
Yeah.
of a
No,
like,
look, it was really an equity investment.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of a regulatory game, I think, on
Yeah.
some level. Um, and a lot of Bitcoin maximalists are, I think, justifiably allergic to any talk of tokens, and we're very skeptical, but we're again pragmatic. We have to keep our investors in mind, and
Hmm.
if there's a project that's using a token in their ecosystem that we think has real economic value behind it, like increasingly companies, and I think this will be more and more the norm, where if we have a regulatory structure that facilitates tokenization of equity, the distinction won't be as meaningful in the long run. Like there are tokens that share in the revenue of a DEX or of a decentralized financial application. That looks a lot like equity. We have to make sure that the regulatory boxes are checked and that there's not too much risk in doing that. But we're increasingly thinking about how we make that decision on a potential founder if they're going to take that path, just kind of in a pragmatic way that we would use to evaluate any other investment.
Few quick questions. Have you ever like built a Bitcoin anything or built a crypto app or anything like that? Curiosity. Have you gone to Washington and actually, um, whatever, lobbied? I'm
Mhm.
curious. So like, I mean,
Yeah,
are you still doing it now as well?
yeah. So I've never built. I cannot build technology, but I've helped companies build more on the business side. Working through their back
Hmm.
end kind of corporate functions.
Hmm.
Um, On the lobbying front, I've never gone to Washington, but like I said earlier, I was working with the
Coinbase
the
policy
blockchain
team. Yeah.
Coinbase and Blockchain Association putting out policy papers. Like when I was at Coinbase, I think they had done they were doing their first trip to Washington, and their CFO Alicia Haas testified in front of the
I
Senate
think I remember
Finance
that.
Committee. So
Mhm.
I was involved in helping prepare for that. And
Wow.
I sort of that was like probably as a legal nerd,
Wow.
like the highlight of my career.
Yeah.
That was really fun to help think through how we would
I guess
approach that
the
conversation.
question I asked the question because I'm just curious. Like you're clearly passionate about it. Why aren't you out in Washington doing stuff now or something
Yeah,
like that?
that's what that's what my manager asked me when I decided to leave Coinbase
Yeah.
because they're like, "This is perfect for you. What are you doing?" And I'm still very much connected to the people that are doing it, and talk with them about what they're doing.
Mhm.
But when I was in like high school and early college, I wanted to go into politics, and I sort of started down that path in college and spent went to Washington, did different conferences and stuff, and was pretty quickly like, oh no, these aren't they're not my people. So I prefer to be working with founders, helping them solve more of the problems of like building stuff.
Mhm.
But I think from my perspective, like the value I add to the founders is understanding at least the current state of how the law and regulation works to help them. I can't give legal advice because I'm not a lawyer, but I could tell them which lawyers to go work with and who's going to give them good legal advice and who's not going to charge them a bunch of money for basically a memo that doesn't give them any clear path.
So
Um,
since you are this policy expert, is the industry still waiting on Genius Act or sorry, on Clarity and anti CBDC, or I mean, I guess mainly Clarity? Like, is that when there's a flood of new startups? Is that what the big holdup is, or
I think it's one of the holdups. Like the Genius Act is important, and the Clarity Act will be important. I think it's going to be more important for allowing some of the bigger, more established players
mm-hmm.
to sort of finalize or decide what their strategy is in the space and start pursuing it. There have been so many rounds and iterations of the institutions are coming, has been the narrative over and over again, and I think many companies have kind of started to think about it and then scrapped it because there was no clear
Mm-hmm.
regulatory path. I think that will spark a bunch of innovation and startups because there'll
Mm.
be new services and products that those companies realize they need. Um,
So you're
on the
saying that the current issue is in the sales pitch when you go to the enterprise company to sell the SaaS product. At a certain point, they start asking you questions that you fundamentally don't know because there's not regulation, and that kind of kills the pitch.
Yeah, or even before that stage, there might be a when I was in consulting at BCG, working for the biggest, oldest companies in the world, there were many times when they would say, "Oh, we need to have like a blockchain strategy or whatever,"
Mm-hmm.
and
Right. Yeah.
it would only go so far because the
Yeah.
answer inevitably was, "Well, we don't really know if you can do this and what the regulation will
But
look
I
like." So I
guess
think it will help.
I, okay, understood. Yes.
For
So
the so I
that's
think
on
it
the
will.
clarity side, but right. So
Yeah.
that's a particular type of company looking for a particular type of service or product, right? Okay.
hmm
So that's on the clarity side of things. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's both. Like stable coins. There's no reason. Like all there's a lot of companies now that are talking about doing stable coins that could have been talking about it,
Right.
5 years ago, but they definitely weren't because of the regulatory uncertainty.
Right.
So I think it'll unlock a lot of that, and I think it will spark a lot of new. I think there's sort of a spectrum of startup founders in terms of their risk appetite or willingness to kind of
Totally.
live in the gray area.
Yeah.
So I think we'll
Totally.
get more and more founders who are comfortable building in the space because now they have a clearer sense of what they can and can't do. I
Hmm.
think it is probably a longer road than it might seem. Like I suspect maybe less so with the Genius Act, but I suspect with the clarity, there'll still need to be like rulemaking from the SEC and the OCC and all the regulators involved in regulating the
Yeah.
financial system. But the over the last few weeks and months, seeing this kind of resurged energy around the real world asset thing. So, like Robinhood and Coinbase talking about tokenizing equities. That's been one of my big, I don't know, visions for the future, where you should be able to rebuild the whole financial system on kind of decentralized infrastructure.
And do you
And
think the right way to do that is using these mirror style tokens, or you think it'll just full on replace everything? It's all on chain.
I don't know what the end state will be. I think in the long run it should all be on chain. The history of like financial regulation is I don't know, super interesting maybe to a specific type of person, but like if you think back like the 1920s or whatever, when equities were just starting to trade, like back in the day you had like bearer instruments, like bonds and stocks were literally pieces of paper that you proved your ownership of by presenting the paper. That's easy to counterfeit, and that happened a bunch. So there was all kinds of scams happening, and that led to sort of the genesis of this more intermediated system where you can't hold a piece of paper that is an Apple stock. You have there's an institution that has to custody that, and you have to access the markets through these brokers. A lot of that, I think, a lot of the policy aims that are outlined in those old antiquated pieces of legislation can be achieved with a decentralized system where everything's transparent. You can prove your ownership of an asset, or an institution can, by signing a transaction on chain. So I think a lot of that will be rebuilt, and it'll, in some ways it competes with Bitcoin, because what's happened over the last 50, 60, 100 years is that increasingly all these other assets have become kind of monetized. So, like stocks and even real estate have kind of a monetary premium attached to them because people want to get out of fiat and store value. And if you can tokenize all these things and get them out of the walled gardens of the financial system, that might sort of persist, because now all of a sudden I might be able to buy coffee with a fraction of my Apple stock, or send it to my friend to pay for dinner or whatever. That maybe that's too complicated, because then you have all these different prices and things rolling around in your head. But I think there's a state of the world where that opens up, and lots of different assets have increasing kind of monetary premium attached to them. But I think in the long run, Bitcoin, it's helpful from a societal economic perspective to kind of have a unit of account, a money that we all think of, and Bitcoin, I think, has the strongest claim to that, given its the incentives and the security model, and the fact that it has a fixed supply, and the monetary policy is kind of unbeatable.
So are you fundraising on chain for your fund? Is that how you're structuring it?
We're not doing like everything on chain. We do have LPs that invest via Bitcoin.
Right, on chain. It's awesome.
Yeah. We would love to. I mean, it's something we think about. Like, there's complications on the back end with regulation and stuff on how we structure that, but it's something we think about for future funds. Like, can we just take all of our capital calls in Bitcoin? That would be pretty cool.
I gotta imagine you got a lot of friends that probably prefer that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Easier.
I mean, yeah, the Bitcoiners definitely prefer to hold Bitcoin. I think for our LP base, a lot of the people that we have involved so far are people who have been in Bitcoin and understand it. I think a lot of the value we add, though, are actually to people who are curious, who understand that it's here, but need somebody to kind of be their steward or their Sherpa into this world, because the Bitcoin world is pretty small, and we all know each other, and so from like a deal flow perspective, when we work with other Bitcoiners, they see a lot of the same things, and we work together on the fund. But I think there's a lot of value for investors who get it and want to be investing in businesses building in this world, but don't know the community as well, or don't have access to the deal flow, or just need somebody to kind of educate them and help them feel confident that they're approaching it in a smart way. Yeah.
Quick 2 questions, then we got to wrap. I appreciate your time today. We ran over a little bit. So who's the team? Can you maybe just talk about the background? I'm just curious. And then, let's just start there. Who's the team?
Yeah, so Eric Yakes has started Epoch. He's the general partner. His background is in kind of private equity and financial consulting. He went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole in the middle of his kind of private equity career and wanted to work in the space, so he quit and wrote a book The Seventh Property, which is one of my favorite kind of Bitcoin economics books, and spent a couple years
And that
getting plugged
became
in.
Bitcoiner's Bible of sorts.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's one of the many. We have we have a long yeah. Bitcoiners have a whole liturgy. Is that the right word? Yeah, we have lots of texts on the on
Yeah,
the religion of
a
Bitcoin,
lot
but
of
it's
words.
it's one of my favorite. And so he got really plugged into the community
Is that how
and was.
you? That's how you met him? Like you read his book and then reached out?
I met him through a mutual friend while he was working on the book, and we just kind of hit it off. And so we stayed in touch while he was writing the book, and then after some years or a year or two of doing that and kind of talking to people and selling the book and going on tour and stuff, he found he was talking to a bunch of founders kind of in this world of like engineers who understand Bitcoin but don't maybe have their head wrapped
Mm-hmm.
around business models and how it plugs into the rest of the world, and he was enjoying advising them and decided to launch Epoch as a way to kind of formalize that and invest in these companies and help them grow.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was working at Celsius, which is a whole nother
Yeah,
story.
bankruptcy.
Yeah, that was a real painful. I don't know. I learned a ton. I'll put it that way. Um, and I was advising him on the fund a little bit, and then as he was kind of scaling, decided he needed a partner in crime, so left Celsius and teamed up with him earlier this year. And then an analyst, um,
Just
Eric, and
quick question there. So like when you go pitch an LP on the side of someone that's not a pure Bitcoiner, someone that's
yeah.
just a wealthy individual, do they say stuff to you? You know, go show me your first Bitcoin trade. If that's not 2013 or before, I'm not like, kind of, you know what I mean? Like if I was a family office, I'd be like, great, show
Yeah,
me the receipt. Like you were either in before 2013 or you weren't. That's all I really care
interesting.
about, you know?
Yeah, I don't think we've ever gotten that kind of a response. It's interesting because our sort of pitch to LPs, definitely there's several different tracks we kind of have to take depending on people's
Mm-hmm.
familiarity and comfort with Bitcoin. And we also always advise people, like, if you haven't already invested in Bitcoin, you
Sorry.
shouldn't
I'm saying
invest with us.
more from the perspective of this LP's listened to 10 funds. They're convinced Bitcoin's
Yeah.
the thing. Like that's all done. Now it's why do we
Oh,
pick
I see.
you versus the other ones? Okay. Like which one of these 10 founders of these funds bought
Was the
Bitcoin
earliest.
first?
Yeah,
Yeah.
has the highest
Yeah. Who's
conviction.
Satoshi? Yeah. Who's Satoshi? That's all I want to know. So like, what is
Yeah.
it that ultimately differentiates you at the end of all this?
Yeah, none of us are Satoshi. I would say that the
Right.
thing that differentiates us is more the kind of like background as operators and financial people. A lot of other VCs are coming at it from a more technical perspective, which is great. But being able to kind of add the help kind of guide founders from the early stage to the later stages and connect them to the bigger later stage funds that we know,
Mm-hmm.
is a big piece of it. And then just the network, that we have from being in the space for a while. Um, I would say those are the two big things. I mean, we try to communicate that differentiation also by putting out like research that has a sort of differentiated perspective or more insightful, takes on where things are headed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would say the bigger hurdle for people that aren't already Bitcoiners is getting them comfortable with Bitcoin. And then you're right, they have to kind of differentiate which manager they're going to work with. I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of that also just kind of comes down to you have to establish rapport and trust with the
Totally.
LPs, which is kind of a longer game. They have to believe that you're going to be a good steward of their capital. And um, yeah.
100%. We talk about that all the time. The network is everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you for your time. I appreciate
Of
that.
course.
Thanks
Thank you.
for everyone listening. Um, Send me LinkedIn messages or whatever if you want to chat more about the fundraise or something offline.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the story is pretty good. Like, can't
Yeah. Yeah.
is are you fairly um invested as far as skin in the game from a fund perspective on it? Like you're all personal LPs with a significant stake.
Yeah. Well, so Eric is as a GP. I'm not yet. Mostly driven by the fact that I have law school loans and a mortgage and three kids and stuff. So but I am in terms of like taking significant personal risk from the kind of path I was on, working at bigger companies. Yeah.
Yeah, your story is basically you got sick of Washington, then you got sick of economic people, and then you found Bitcoin, and then that was it. It
Yeah, and
sounds like.
I've just always wanted to work with founders,
Yeah.
and to kind of build my own thing and be a part of this building this future, because that's what's kind of most compelling to me about
What
it.
about working with platforms like Republic or some of these or Robinhood directly? Is that
Yeah, you
something
mean
you're
like,
exploring?
yeah, I mean, in terms of like any of those institutions that would be helpful, like customers or partners to our portfolio companies, like absolutely, try to connect them with their BD teams and stuff where that makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, like we just want to build stuff that makes Bitcoin better, and obviously generates return for our investors. So we're not sort of, I don't know, religiously opposed to like the big centralized companies if they're willing to work with the companies we're investing in that are building things that will benefit both sides. That's definitely something we do.
It's hard for me to realize how truly like Bitcoiny, that you are. What would you say you were first 500 people in the global community of Bitcoin?
No, 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 not that early. I mean,
10,000?
I don't know. It's kind of hard. It's hard
I
to.
mean, you said what was it? 2011 is when you learned
That's
about
when
it?
I started like reading about it, and
Yeah.
like 2012, 2013, I started like talking to people online about it and doing meetups and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, it felt like there were more than maybe, I don't think, maybe 10,000. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
I'm definitely not, like Yoshi. I wasn't on the listserv that got the Bitcoin white paper. Um, but
Yeah, but you were thinking about this stuff for
a
11
long time.
to 13, 14 years, probably every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right, so let's end it with that. Where do you, let's say optimistic only, what happens in the next 5 years?
5 years. I think there will be.
Everything gets passed. Everything's optimistic. Like we're off to the races in 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, I think in 5 years, every major financial institution will have some kind of service supporting Bitcoin. I think several major governments will like either have some kind of Bitcoin backed money, or like it'll be part of their central bank reserve, um, at this rate. Um, 5 years. Uh, we kind of
You
we kind of
think
start to
wait,
think
you
about
think
it.
multiple governments will have Bitcoin backed money?
At the very least, they'll have it in their like central bank. It'll be a reserve asset for
That part
many
makes sense to me.
for
Okay.
many governments.
Okay.
Um, yeah, 5 years is probably too short to have like a full, like a major nation switch over, but we'll be on that trajectory, I think. Um, and I think we'll start to enter, like we kind of think about the evolution and sort of the phases of money. So like money, the purposes of money is like store of value, medium of exchange, unit of account. I think store of value has been, I think, increasingly established. Will be moving into the medium of exchange kind of thing. I think people will increasingly use it more like money, because I suspect 5 years the market cap of Bitcoin will look a lot more like gold. Um, it'll be sort of on par with gold, and so that there'll still be growth from there, I think, but
It
it'll have.
it it has to be on par with gold if it's going to do what you're saying, which is
Right.
being
Yeah, yeah.
backable and backing.
Hmm. Yeah. I think 5 years is when we start to get close to gold level kind of adoption and value.
Yeah, and then Bitcoin's something like 2032 trillion or whatever it is if it does that.
Yeah, it's like, I think right now it's kind of like $1.2 million Bitcoin ish. is yeah.
So everybody thought that oh my, I mean that would be insane. So everyone like I guess thought Bitcoin was a company in some ways,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so you
Yeah.
kind of value a company on like a price to earnings ratio and you look at its underlying cash flows, blah blah blah, right? And so like
Mhm.
the largest company in the world is Nvidia, 4 trillion. So I think I, up until maybe recently, always looked at Bitcoin as like, oh, well, if NVIDIA is the largest, then Bitcoin can never get more than 4 trillion. And then very recently, I realized, no, dummy.
Right.
Gold is 32 trillion. It's,
Yeah.
7 times NVIDIA. And actually, Bitcoin's a commodity. Therefore, it's comparable to gold, not a company. Therefore, 4 trillion is like, and I never really digested that until within honestly the last week. Uh, and now
Yeah.
I see what people are saying. $1 million a coin. What do you? Yeah, of course, that's just gold. It's not even a crazy thing to say. It's like pretty logical, actually.
It is kind of it's one of those things like when you see it, you kind of can't unsee it.
Right.
Because when you think about all the different ways people try to save and store value for the long term, you might
Right.
use your house or a business or all kinds of investments. And in theory, those are the fact that they can generate cash flow is good, but the valuations of those things have become so out of whack with the cash flows that they're actually generating, and that's because the fiat system is kind of continuously devaluing itself. So money is trying to flow to assets that won't be devalued,
You're saying
and you get
like
this.
a cap rate for real estate in the 70s was 20, so like 20% return, and now it's 7 or whatever. And you're saying the asset value has gone up, but the cash flow has not gone up, and so therefore that looks worse on a ratio basis.
Yeah, and the way I think about it is some of that value is because people are flowing capital into real estate, for example, because they know it's a somewhat scarce asset that does
Mhm.
have cash flow that will hold value better than the alternative, which is fiat currency that can just be printed kind of to zero.
Mhm.
But over time, as more and more people realize that Bitcoin is here to stay, and it's a much better asset for storing value. It's highly liquid. It's fungible. It's you can break it down into tiny pieces and sell a fraction of it. You can't do that with real estate.
Mhm.
Um, or many other
Not
assets that
yet.
you right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that'll happen. Those things will
Yeah,
happen in
but
parallel.
because of Bitcoin, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, they're all kind of competing in some way to kind of have this monetary value attributed to them. It's a
Uh-huh.
harder thing to value, than a cash flowing asset. But I think the people that sort of say like, oh, like the Warren Buffett of the world that are like, this thing's rat poison, it doesn't generate a cash flow. They're just ignoring the fact that there are tons of assets that have value
Right.
that can be under or overvalued based on that. Because of other things other than the cash flow. It's just a supply and demand thing. And if people demand an asset that you can send anywhere in the world instantly that will maintain its value over a long term, that value will flow into Bitcoin. That sounds like the kind of thing that would appeal to me.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who feel that way. So I think it will continue to kind of bring those flows of capital into it as an asset class.
Okay, actually last thing, but it's so interesting. So like do you think what happened here is that we're basically repegging the dollar to stable coins as we speak? Is that what just happened? In the sense that like just real quick, because I want to make sure, like, because I've been thinking about this a lot. So
Yeah.
like at some point, some company on the stock market is going to be valued at a quadrillion dollars. Quadrillion, is that the word? Whatever the
Yeah.
next after trillion,
Yeah. A
I
thousand
remember,
trillion.
yeah, I remember as a kid, my dad being like, $1 billion is unachievable. Like no one makes $1 billion.
Right.
Now it's like you
Right.
fucking read it every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
just like clearly like the illions are going up and we're getting to quadrillions and like
Yeah.
that's where this is. And so in some ways it's like that sounds so ridiculous, a quadrillion-dollar company that they're almost like repegging this to crypto. Does that make sense? Or like I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
Am
So
I
it's there's a from what the way I see it, there's sort of like a nugget of truth that you're stumbling on, which is
Mhm.
there is no limit to the only limit to how much Nvidia can be worth is how many dollars get printed. Like And this is there's sort of Bitcoiners that have like infinity over 21 million as like a, I don't know, on their Twitter profile, because
Mhm.
if you can print infinite dollars and all the dollars are, used to buy Bitcoin, then infinity over 21 million is the price of Bitcoin. So like the quadrillion is insane, but it's driven by the fact that the fiat system allows governments to print as much money as they want, with some constraints. One of those constraints is the debt markets.
Mhm.
So treasuries, in order for the government to print more money, they generally do it by issuing debt. In order for interest rates not to explode, they need buyers of that debt.
Mhm.
And so stablecoins, stablecoin issuers are increasingly very large buyers of treasuries, because they take dollar deposits, buy treasuries to generate yield on those deposits, and the treasury market's super liquid. So if they need to redeem the stablecoins, they can very easily. So I think that was part of the kind of impetus for the momentum towards the Genius Act. Like the US government couldn't ignore the stablecoin industry. It was becoming not too big to fail. I don't think it's like a systemic risk at this point, but it's like an important part of the ecosystem of people who are buying US treasuries and will continue to be that. So
Right.
I think that's a big part of it. I don't know that it'll ever, well, I don't know. Central
'Cause I
banks and other big institutions are also buyers of those things.
there was that moment 2 months ago where we had issues selling treasury bonds.
Mhm.
And so that's what I thought stablecoins was gonna solve, and then yesterday as I was, like, reading more or whatever, it's they stablecoin companies primarily buy T-bills.
Yeah,
So, that's the short-term version. So,
right.
how does that solve the problem of the US government not being able to
Well,
sell bonds if it's bills that they're buying?
yeah. I mean, so there has been, over the last 2 or 3 years, the
Mhm.
one of the things the Treasury's been doing is been issuing more on the short end.
Mhm.
So they've been issuing more
Right,
bills.
right.
So that's helpful for them. If that's their strategy, it can kind of
Okay.
increase liquidity in the system without necessarily messing with interest
Gotcha.
rates.
Gotcha.
Um, I don't know if that's a long-term thing, but also I think as the stablecoin issuers get bigger and it becomes a more well-established sort of system, they may have the ability to play more in the long end, longer
Right,
dated
right, right.
securities, because the
And you're saying you build a portfolio of liquidity as a
right,
issuer of stablecoins.
right.
Okay, that
But
makes
I
sense.
think sort of more importantly from the perspective of like dollar dominance or whatever in the world, I
Mhm,
think there is also an aspect of this that like if the world is moving this direction, the US needs to have a strategy that enables it to flourish, because dollar stablecoins being circulated everywhere is good for the dollar and helps kind of minimize the move away from the dollar that could happen
mhm,
if people don't have access to it. So it kind of increases access to it. It's a little bit of like a, I don't know, a vampire attack on other currencies, because it allows more people to get access to these things outside of the more slow, kind of difficult to navigate and expensive financial system.
yeah, no, it's the savior. I mean, if it all works, it's the savior, and also if it really works, is there just gonna be one global currency? I mean, that would be insane.
Yeah, I mean, so the really hardcore Bitcoin maximalists
Oh, you
think
must
that
hate
there
that.
can only be one currency.
Oh, you do like that. Okay.
Well, no, no, they think it'll be Bitcoin.
Okay.
I think they hate the dollar, but they think it'll be, Bitcoin will be the only global money. I think there will be one dominant money. I think there's always been lots of different kinds of money, and so I don't think there'll ever be only one without some kind of global government forcing it down everyone's throat. And even in that case, like in prison, cigarettes are money, and like there's always different forms of
Right, right,
currency
right.
competing, and different assets that have kind of monetary characteristics. But I think Bitcoin will be a competitor with the dollar. I think in the next 10 years, that's when it's sort of like they're going to be competing in a serious way.
Competing in a serious way. And you don't
Yeah.
think that it'll just be purely complementary because of all this stablecoin stuff and just,
I mean,
you
I do
know
think it'll be complementary. I haven't, I need, I, this is sort of on my list of things I want to like dig into and do like a
yeah, think about it.
research paper on or something. But the process through which the dollar maybe loses its status, because every other global reserve currency has, waxed and waned and grown and then sort of collapsed, and it happens in different ways and for different reasons. I think if we don't get our kind of house in order from a debt perspective, regardless of what happens with Bitcoin, the dollar might lose its status as a global reserve currency, which it could happen in a catastrophic, really painful way for the US. It could happen in a way where like nobody really notices and it just sort of, fades.
Right, like the
And there's a
UK.
new. Right. Well, yeah. People probably noticed World War II, but then
Well, that's fair.
there wasn't
Yeah, that's fair.
there wasn't like a hyperinflation Weimar Republic kind of situation where people were
Yeah,
carting around wheelbarrows
I
of
see what you're saying.
pounds.
Yeah.
And I don't. That could happen. I think, but I think it's more likely that the sort of burden of empire becomes too expensive for us to maintain, and slowly these more decentralized systems offer alternative options for people around the world and for governments, and the US might lose some of its kind of bargaining power.
And the alternative to that potential is $15 trillion go on to stable coins in the next 10 years, all backed by T-bills. And we just grow like absolutely mad as a country because of deregulation, blah, blah, blah. And our deficit ratio improves, not because we stop spending less, but because we grow a lot. And then the US dollar is still dominant globally because it's, backing all these stable coins. So in that reality, and correct me if I'm missing something, I don't know, but in that reality, are Bitcoiners happy? Or is it irrelevant to a Bitcoiner?
I think it's mostly irrelevant to a Bitcoiner. Like I think Bitcoiners are happy as long as Bitcoin is continuing to do what we want it to do. Like more and more people are taking control of their own financial life, holding it as an asset that gives them sovereignty and financial freedom. And for me personally to be happy, if it's getting to a place where it's putting constraints on the ability for governments to print money, that to me is the real benefit. So what you just described, stablecoins are probably a piece of that and will help, but really what that requires is the world to continue growing and for more of the world to use the dollar standard. And that's actually what's enabled the dollar. That's what's enabled the US government to print forever, because we basically export our inflation around the world.
Totally,
more and more people are buying dollars. We extract wealth from the rest of the world.
And because it's the
using that.
reserve, we've trapped everyone in a genius
Right.
way, by the way. Really smart, but yeah.
It's very evil
Yeah, well,
genius kind of way. And I don't know if it
genius.
was ever like designed with that in mind, but it's just
I don't
that's
think so.
just the basic sort of mechanics of how it works. But it does create. You're seeing that the result of that, and I can't remember there's an economic law. There's like a paradox that I'm blanking on. There's a cost that comes with being a global reserve currency, which is that your domestic economy becomes increasingly financialized, and you're basically relying on the rest of the world to produce actual stuff. So
which is exactly what we've just all been privy to and had pointed out to us.
Yeah, we've been hollowing out our own economy, our own industrial base, and also redistributing. Like the real problem with fiat is that it redistributes wealth from poor people to rich people, because the people who are closest to the spigot of fiat money benefit the most from the system, and
because
so
they can take fees each time it moves. Is that
well,
why?
they also, like, the way I think about it is like they get the money when it's printed, which is before the inflationary impact of that has spread. So they can buy assets at lower prices with the new money. It's like if you have a gold mine and you get the gold, you can buy it before everyone else has access to the gold and can drive prices up.
Does that metaphor work? Because wouldn't gold be less valuable if you started giving it away? Whereas
it would. Same with dollar. So imagine like an asteroid hits.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Okay, never mind. You buy the house next door at market prices, but now that gold flows through, and then market prices go up. But you benefit because you had it first. You can buy it before people kind of are aware that the new money is there.
Is that how that's to happen? Asteroid has to hit your backyard, implant
Or have you
gold in it?
found a gold mine or whatever? Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
yeah.
Um, well, I really appreciate this, VJ. I feel like so just so I understand, so 2011 you discovered this still in college.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then moved throughout life. You've been 100% full time in this since 2011.
No. So I wanted to work in
BCG.
it. I was not a technical person. So back in the
Mhm.
early days, like there was nothing for somebody for like me to do. I was working in economic consulting at FTI for 5 or 6 years. Decided to go to law school at Harvard, thinking that at that point I realized there were a lot of unanswered legal questions in Bitcoin and crypto. And I was like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm not an engineer, but I can be a lawyer for early stage companies and help them navigate this stuff. So
Mhm.
went to law school planning to be a lawyer, and spent my whole time trying to understand the regulatory frameworks and networking with people, doing some of the. I wasn't doing lobbying, but I was like at Harvard's like a crazy place. Like anybody you want to talk to will talk to you. It's
Right.
like a candy shop for nerds. So there were like I did some research for senators and their staff, and Gary Gensler, who was the chairman of the SEC, was at the MIT at the time and was a part of our like crypto reading group. So trying to do lobby, trying to convince
Wait,
people of my
that's when
worldview.
he was pro crypto?
Yeah, I mean he was always skeptical, but he
But
was. Yeah, I mean
that
he
was
taught a class.
not once he went scorched earth. That was before
Yes,
all
it
that.
was before he had the ability to go scorched earth. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, but so
But okay, so
the
yeah, so you did all that. So when did you get into it full time? What year was that then?
Coinbase was my first full time in the
Okay.
space. I was doing consulting for companies and stuff, and and I was at that point I was buying Bitcoin and then did some trading and stuff in the 2017 cycle and made a bunch of money and lost a bunch of money and learned more about everything. And uh, when I decided when I was in law school, I went to go work at Perkins Coie, which is a law firm here in Seattle.
Yeah, I did some work
They
with him in San
they
Francisco.
were like the earliest big firm, just to
Mhm.
work with Bitcoin and crypto companies, and they have
Mhm.
the best practice. So I was going to go work with them, and it was this like really painful decision because they were great, but I just decided I didn't want to be a lawyer because it,
I
I
get
don't
it.
like.
You don't have to finish that sentence.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
Perkins Coie. They were I had a venture fund years ago, and they were actually one of our LP investors
Oh, really? That's
directly.
cool.
Yeah, they have a uh, like a whatever. Yeah, so you should ask them.
Yeah, they have it. Yeah, yeah, I'll call them up. I'll call them up.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I still talk to Dax, which is like he's like their main crypto partner. They have a great
I think
team,
that's
and
the guy.
they know the most. Really? Was it a crypto fund or was it a?
No, it's virtual reality, but I don't know. I don't think he was the guy that did it, but that sounds so familiar. Dax. Oh yeah, I do have an email. Let's see. Oh, I invited him to my event in 2001. Oh, interesting. So yeah, he said we've set up a number of crypto funds, blah blah blah. Okay, I think I was actually this is 2021. I remember now. I was trying to start a crypto company, or sorry,
Mhm.
crypto hedge fund. Um, that was like my initial moment of learning. Instead of learning, I just decided I was going to start a hedge fund like an idiot, and then I actually didn't do that and spent 3 years learning. Uh,
It's good.
yeah, it's probably smart. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, he seemed like a good guy.
Yeah, they're a great team. But I just decided, like I wanted to be more involved on the business side, building stuff. So went back into
Mhm.
consulting after law school at BCG, mostly just to remind the job market that I could do business stuff.
Something. Yeah.
And was looking for roles in crypto. And then when Coinbase went remote, that's when I decided to make the leap. And yeah, have been full time in the space since then.
Is there anything I can do to help you or the fund or crypto or anything you're doing right now?
I mean, anyone that likes investing in VC, that is interested in Bitcoin and what we're doing, happy to talk to them. And then it sounds like you have a good community of founders who are building stuff. If any of them, are building on Bitcoin, happy to talk to them. Or if any of them are sort of curious and like just want to brainstorm and learn more and think about what they could build, like that's kind of my favorite thing to do. So
Do you have a list of ideas somewhere, or how do you
no, I
document
should.
all
I
that?
should. should have a running list. I guess I do. I have several lists. They're not harmonized into one place.
Let's launch take your ideas and put my programming on it. I do this stuff monthly or weekly. Like we can go a little
Oh yeah,
boot camp. Yeah.
yeah.
I need some
Okay.
good crypto ideas.
Yeah. I'll send them along
All right, good.
as they occur to me.
Well, no, but you don't do any accelerator stuff. You're all doing the 500,000.
We don't. Yeah.
Okay.
There are, if people are interested, there are some, like Wolf Accelerator is a Bitcoin focused accelerator. I think they're in New York. I mean, I know they're in New York. They might also be on the West Coast, but yeah.
It's just mind blowing. All right, VJ, thank you so much for your time. Thank you
to
everyone that listened. I appreciate that. Yeah, cool. We're doing a conversation with Lightspeed Ventures on Wednesday. If you want to come to, it's going to be like a Shark Tank. I've been trying to do this one's smart glasses themed. Maybe that would be a fun thing to collaborate on. This one's smart glasses themed, so everyone pitching is within that space. But I've done this a few times now in the last 2 months where I do a Shark Tank style and 10 founders pitch a VC.
Oh, cool.
That would be cool to do. Maybe we organize around you or something and I could go bring some crypto founders.
Sure.
I'll market through my network and then leverage your fund.
Yeah, that'd be great. Happy to do that.
All right, that'd be fun.
I'll try to tune in. This is actually my first like live stream thing. So I'm Brave New World learning.
Wait, I gotta show you some sick stuff. Ready? You impressed?
What is are those like cool graphics?
Check this out. I'm changing the background.
That's cool. Oh, I see. Yeah. Wow. The production value, that's just through the roof. That's cool.
I've been having a lot of fun. I live streamed the entire Trump signing ceremony, which I've never had more than a few hundred viewers. That one got 2,000 plus because his name's so covered.
Wow.
But it was so great. Literally all I did was just live stream it, put this little banner up. Yeah, I'm loving this live stream stuff. It's so fun.
It's funny. We actually talk about it amongst ourselves at the fund. It's like, what's the new, what's the next generation of like VC look like? Like, should we stream all our meetings and our debriefs and our pitches and like just be super open and transparent about our process? And I
have so many VCs talking about that when they see this. Here, I'll show you this real quick. This is my other theory on the future of VC. This is my startup community page. If I was a VC, this is exactly how I would structure this here. So I'd have two of these communities on school. One would be for portfolio. One would be for, let me get rid of this. One would be for portfolio and one would be for just like
pipeline.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I would do if I was a VC. This is how I do it. Very similar. So like joined Startup Labs is the free one, pipeline. And then Don's Founder Club is like the premium paid one. So that would be the comparable. And then, so like you can cultivate a lot of good founders within here. You know what I mean? And like, I think the thing that I've realized is that I've seen some founders not get it at all when they joined and like a year later really have understood the VC mindset. And that's because they're working their ass off. It's also because they've like come to a lot of these conversations that I do. We do them almost every Wednesday, as you can see.
That's great.
Yeah. So
I'll send along some like, we definitely talk to a lot of earlier stage folks who are, at the beginning of that learning journey. I'll send them along. Because it's a whole game.
I would love that, but I'm saying more from your perspective.
Yeah.
This is, I think where VC, it's like, that's the fun portfolio. They all get to know each other. Then there's the live stream aspect, which is the deal flow generation. Like this, to me, this is the future of VC.
Yeah. All right, we'll start building it. I'll use your framework.
Buy it from me, license it.
Yeah.
All right. Adios. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks for having me on, Don.
Yeah, absolutely, VJ. We went way over, almost double our time. That was